The slap didn't land, but it might as well have. Mrs. Diana Caldwell's palm stopped 2 inches from Maya's face, close enough that Maya felt the air move against her cheek, and then the hand curled slowly into a pointed finger instead. The HR director held that finger between them like a blade, her burgundy-painted nail trembling with the effort of restraint, and she said it again, quieter this time, which was somehow worse. "You trapped my son." The break room of Gold Line Distribution Center had never been so silent. 6 women who had been eating lunch from plastic containers were now frozen mid-bite, eyes cast down at the linoleum floor. Nobody looked at Maya. Nobody looked at the HR director either. They all found the floor very, very interesting. Maya stood with her back against the refrigerator. She was 26 years old. Her uniform shirt had a mustard stain near the collar from where her daughter Zara, 8 months old, had spit up that morning while Maya was trying to hold her and button up at the same time. She hadn't noticed the stain until now. She noticed it now because Mrs. Caldwell's eyes had found it, had cataloged it, and had used it to confirm something she had already decided. "She is nothing," those eyes said, "and I will prove it." What Mrs. Caldwell did not know, what she could not know, because she had never bothered to learn, it was that the elderly man mopping the floor in the corridor just outside the break room door had stopped mopping. He was listening. His name to everyone at Gold Line Distribution Center was Uncle Pete. He had been mopping floors at this facility for 11 days. He wore a gray uniform that smelled faintly of industrial cleaner and the coffee from the thermos he brought every morning, because he was 71 years old and had decided that at 71, a man drank what he liked regardless of what anyone thought of the smell. He was stopped in the way of men who have spent long lives carrying things, though in his case the things he had carried were not physical. He wore thick-lensed glasses with a crack in the left lens that he had taped over with a strip of Scotch tape. He had a slow, deliberate way of moving the mop that made younger workers assume he was lazy, unaware that he was actually thinking. His real name was Edward Harmon. He had founded Gold Line Group 43 years ago with $8,000 borrowed from a church savings cooperative in rural Ohio. Gold Line now operated 31 distribution centers across 11 states. It employed 19,000 people. Its logistics contracts supplied food commodities to over 200,000 households monthly, including the household of Mrs. Diana Caldwell. Her salary, her son Tyler's allowance, her house in a gated community in Connecticut, all of it flowed, in one way or another, from the company whose floors her friend thought she was managing. Edward Harmon stood in the corridor and listened, and his jaw tightened underneath his gray stubble. He had a daughter. She had been 24 when a man decided she was convenient, and then decided she was a problem. Edward had watched his daughter navigate the aftermath alone, with a baby on her hip and a business degree she couldn't leverage because no firm would return her calls. He had helped her, eventually, but not before she had stood in rooms very much like this one, being spoken to in a voice very much like Mrs. Caldwell's. He had not come to the Gold Line Distribution Center by accident. It started 3 weeks ago. A letter had arrived at the corporate office handwritten, which was unusual enough that his secretary had walked it directly to him instead of processing it through standard channels. It was from an employee at the Chicago Southside facility, a woman named Maya Reyes. She wasn't writing to complain. She was writing to report something, though she framed it with so many apologies and qualifications that it took him 2 readings to understand what she was actually saying. She had discovered, she wrote, that the facility's HR director had been systematically adjusting productivity records. Workers who filed formal grievances would find their scores quietly downgraded over the following weeks. The downgraded scores were used to deny them performance bonuses and, in 3 cases over the past year, to justify termination. She had documentation. She had attached photocopies. She wanted someone to know. She was not sure this letter would reach anyone who cared. Edward had read the letter 4 times. Then he had told his secretary to tell no one, had gone home, and had spent 2 days deciding what to do. On the 3rd day, he had called his head of security and told him to arrange a cover identity. By the following Monday, Uncle Pete was mopping floors. In 11 days, he had seen enough to know that Maya's letter had understated the problem. The morning of the break room confrontation, Edward had been in the corridor at exactly 7:45 a.m. because he had learned that Mrs. Caldwell arrived at 7:42 and went to the break room to prepare her coffee before her official day started. He had been watching her patterns. He wanted to see how she moved when she thought no one important was watching. He had seen her stop at Maya's workstation the previous Thursday and lean down to say something quiet, something that made Maya's hands go still on the conveyor belt for a full 3 seconds before she resumed working. He had noted it. He had said nothing. Now he stood outside the break room door with his mop in both hands, and he listened to Mrs. Caldwell's voice carrying clearly through the slightly open door. "Everyone knows what you did. You found a man with a good family, and you made sure he couldn't leave. That's what girls like you do." A pause. "Girls like me." Maya's voice, quieter but steady. "Don't repeat my words back to me like I said something wrong." "I'm not repeating them like you said something wrong. I'm just—" A breath. "I want to make sure I heard correctly." "You heard correctly. And let me tell you something else. Your position here is probationary. That means—" "I know what probationary means." The room went quieter than before. Mrs. Caldwell, Edward could tell from the pause, was recalibrating. She had not expected to be interrupted. "You're very bold," Mrs. Caldwell said softly, "for someone whose contract renewal is next month." Edward's hands tightened on the mop handle. He looked down at his cracked lens glasses reflected in the linoleum floor. He could end this right now. He could walk in, pull out the card in his breast pocket, and watch Mrs. Caldwell's face turn the color of wet ash. He didn't move, not yet, because there was something he needed to know first, and he hadn't seen it yet. He needed to know what Maya would do. She did not quit. That was the first thing. She went back to her workstation after Mrs. Caldwell swept out of the break room, and she put on her gloves, and she started working. Edward watched her from the far end of the warehouse floor, mopping, always somehow positioned within sight of what mattered. He watched her set her jaw and reach for the scanner gun and begin moving boxes, and he could see from the set of her shoulders that she was having a conversation with herself. A fierce one. He had learned, in 11 days, a few things about Maya Reyes. She had a daughter named Zara, who had a heart murmur that was being monitored monthly at Rush University Medical Center. Each monitoring appointment cost over $800 in consultation and test fees alone. Maya had no partner. Tyler Caldwell had disappeared from her life 6 weeks after Zara was born, which was, Edward noted, approximately 2 weeks after his mother learned of the baby's existence. Maya had a younger brother in high school whose after-school program fees she was covering. She lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on the south side with her mother, who cleaned houses 3 days a week. She could not afford to lose this job. By any rational calculation, she needed to survive here quietly, keep her head down, and wait for her contract renewal. He knew she wasn't going to do that. He had read her letter 3 weeks ago. He knew what kind of woman she was. He just needed to watch. The moment came at 2:30 in the afternoon. Edward was positioned near the storage cage at the east end of the floor when he saw it. Mrs. Caldwell had come down from the admin offices unusually for this hour and was walking the floor with Marcus Webb, the floor supervisor. Marcus was a solid man in his mid-30s who wore the expression of someone who had been managing his anxiety with forced cheerfulness for so long that the cheerfulness had become indistinguishable from his actual face. Edward had studied Marcus too. He knew that Marcus's wife was 8 months pregnant. He knew that Marcus had taken out a personal loan and that 3 monthly payments were already overdue. He knew, because he had seen it, that Mrs. Caldwell kept a folder on her desk with Marcus's name on it. Mrs. Caldwell walked the floor with Marcus, and she spoke to him quietly, and Edward moved closer, mop in hand, slow and unremarkable. "The Reyes file. I want the amended productivity scores uploaded by Friday. Not next Friday. This Friday." Marcus's voice tighter than usual. "The scores are accurate. I ran them myself." "I know you ran them. Run them again." A pause. "There's nothing wrong with—" "Marcus." Her voice dropped to something almost gentle. "Your wife is almost due, yes? A baby is expensive. Your continuation bonus processes in 2 weeks. Let's make sure everything is in order on your end so there are no complications." Marcus said nothing. Edward made a note of the silence. What Mrs. Caldwell didn't know that Maya had paused 2 rows over, reaching for a box on the upper shelf. and had heard enough. Maya went home that evening and sat on the edge of her bed with Zara asleep against her chest and the letter she had sent to corporate offices 3 weeks ago spread out on her lap, the copy she had kept for herself. She had typed it at the FedEx print shop on Michigan Avenue, spending $6 she hadn't really had because she thought maybe, just maybe, it would reach someone who cared. She had heard nothing back. She picked up her phone. She put it down. She picked it up again. If I report this directly, if I go above Mrs. Caldwell to the regional manager, she will know it was me. She will amend my file before the week is out. I will not get my renewal. No renewal means no salary. No salary means... She looked at Zara's face, the tiny flickering eyelids, the small fist curled under a soft chin. No salary means Zara's appointment next month doesn't happen. She put the phone down. She sat with it for 40 minutes. Then she remembered something her grandmother used to say, back when they still lived in San Antonio, before everything became harder. A lie that fear protects doesn't die quietly. It just eats more slowly. Maya picked up the phone. She opened her email. She had screenshots. She had been careful, much more careful than Mrs. Caldwell knew. She had them saved in a cloud folder under a name that meant nothing. She began to type. The next morning, Maya arrived early. She went directly to the admin block, to the office of the regional operations manager, a man named Mr. Sanders who had a reputation for being reasonable and a secondary reputation for being easily swayed by whoever had spoken to him most recently. She had printed her evidence. She had it in a manila folder. She stood at his door and knocked. She told him everything. She told him about the productivity records. She showed him the screenshots' original scores, then the amended versions, side by side, timestamps intact. She told him about the conversation she had overheard the previous afternoon. She named Marcus Webb as a witness, which she knew might cost her his goodwill, but she named him anyway because it was the truth. Mr. Sanders's face went through several complicated arrangements. He asked her to leave the folder. He said he would look into it. He did not tell her she had done the right thing. He did not tell her she had done the wrong thing either. He looked at his desk the entire time she was speaking, which told her very little about what he would actually do. She walked back to the warehouse floor and put on her gloves and picked up her scanner gun. Her hands were shaking. She scanned boxes for 4 hours. Mrs. Caldwell arrived on the warehouse floor at 11:30 with Mr. Sanders behind her and a younger man from the admin office and the expression of someone who has been informed of a betrayal and has decided to make the person responsible understand the full cost of it publicly. She stopped in the center of the floor, in the space between conveyor lines where everyone could see. Maya Reyes. Maya stopped. She turned. Come here. She walked across. Every pair of eyes on the floor tracked her. Nobody spoke. The conveyor belt kept moving. Mrs. Caldwell didn't lower her voice. You went to Mr. Sanders this morning with a collection of fabricated documents and a story designed to damage my professional reputation. They're not fabricated. You're calling me a liar. I'm saying the documents are real. The timestamps are... You manipulated timestamps. That's exactly the kind of thing an employee facing contract review would do to deflect attention from their own performance issues. Mrs. Caldwell half turned to address the floor workers as if she were giving a lesson. This is someone who came to this company with a personal agenda. She used a relationship with a member of a prominent family to try to gain access and influence, and when that failed, that is not what happened. She decided to attack the people responsible for evaluating her performance. Maya felt the floor tilt slightly beneath her. Not fear, something older and steadier than fear, the sensation of standing in a place where the ground has already decided not to hold you, and the only thing left is to decide how you stand. She looked around the floor. She looked at the 6 women who had been in the break room the day before. They were all looking at the conveyor belt. She looked at Marcus Webb, who was standing near the cage door with his clipboard held in front of his stomach like a small shield. He met her eyes for exactly 1 second, then looked away. She was completely alone. Mrs. Caldwell said, quieter now, with the satisfaction of someone watching a thing fall, Security will escort you to collect your personal items. Your access badge will be deactivated. From the corner near the storage bay, Uncle Pete set down his mop. He walked slowly. He walked the way old men walk when they are in no hurry because they have already decided everything. He walked through the middle of the floor until he was standing 6 feet from Mrs. Caldwell, and then he stopped. Mrs. Caldwell glanced at him. The glance was the glance you give a mop that has rolled into your path. Not now. I've been watching, Uncle Pete said. His voice was different, not louder, but different. The softness of studied concealment was gone from it. Mrs. Caldwell turned more fully. I said, not now. I've been watching for 11 days, he said. I've seen the records. I've seen the folder on your desk. I've stood in the corridor outside your office and heard 3 separate conversations in which you instructed people beneath you to falsify documentation. The floor had gone completely still. Even the conveyor belt felt quieter, though it was still running. Mrs. Caldwell's eyes narrowed. Who are you? The old man reached into the breast pocket of his gray uniform and removed a card. He held it out, and Mrs. Caldwell took it from him before she knew why. Because authority is trained into us from childhood, and she reached for the offered card without thinking. She read it. The room watched her face. Her face did not fall all at once. It fell in stages the way a building falls in a controlled demolition. First one support, then the next, until the whole structure is moving, and there is nothing to be done but watch it finish. The card read, Edward Harmon, Chairman and Founder, Gold Line Group. That's not Mrs. Caldwell started. You can't. She stopped. She looked at the card again. This is some kind of... My security team has been copying your system access logs for 9 days, Edward said. The amended files are time-stamped. Your login credentials are attached to every change. I have audio from 3 conversations. My legal team has been reviewing everything since Tuesday. I was acting in the company's best interest. You were acting in your own interest. You were protecting your son from personal embarrassment by making a young woman's job untenable. You used company systems to do it. She manipulated my son. Your son called my personal office 14 months ago. His voice did not rise. He found the number through one of our corporate directories. He told me he wanted to marry a woman named Maya Reyes, that she was the most serious person he had ever known, and that he was afraid of how his family would react. I offered to help. He never called back. I imagined someone discouraged him. The silence lasted a long time. Please, Mrs. Caldwell said, and then, smaller. Please, I have my position. I know what you have, Edward said, and I know what you almost took from someone else. It was Marcus who moved first. He walked from the cage door across the floor. He stopped beside Maya, and he held out his clipboard, and on the clipboard was a printed sheet, the original productivity scores before any amendments, with his supervisor's verification stamp at the bottom. He said, I kept copies. I kept them from the first time. She asked me to change them. I should have. His voice broke slightly. I should have brought them sooner. Maya looked at him for a moment. She did not say anything. Then she nodded once. It was not forgiveness exactly. It was acknowledgement. It was the understanding that fear is real and that its costs fall on everyone. Security escorted Mrs. Caldwell from the floor. She did not look at anyone as she went. Her heels made sounds on the linoleum, and then the sound stopped when the door closed. Edward found Maya in the loading bay at the end of the shift. She was sitting on a crate with her bag on her lap, looking at her phone at a photo of Zara, her daughter's face filling the small screen, eyes closed, at peace with everything. He sat down on a crate across from her. His knees complained. He didn't hurry. I got your letter, he said. She looked up. 3 weeks ago. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. I thought no one read it. I read it 4 times. He looked at his hands. I came here because I needed to see the place for myself. And I needed to see you. Why? He thought about how to say it. Because letters can be written by many kinds of people for many kinds of reasons. I needed to know what kind of person you were before I decided anything. And now you know. Now I know. He took a breath. I would like to offer you the compliance oversight role for this region. It's a new position I'm creating. Your job is to make sure what happened here cannot happen systematically anywhere else in this facility. You report directly to Group Legal. No intermediate filter. Maya looked at him for a long time. I want one condition. Tell me. Marcus keeps his job. His wife is due next month. He made a mistake, but he fixed it when it mattered. I don't want his family to pay for it. Edward nodded. Done. She looked back down at Zara's photo. Then she closed her phone and stood up, and she held out her hand, and he shook it. 3 months later, there was a small wooden board mounted on the wall of the break room at Gold Line Distribution Center, Chicago. It had been put up quietly, without announcement. It listed the facility's employee grievance procedure in plain language, 14 steps, no ambiguity, direct channels. Maya had written it. She had spent 2 weeks getting the language right. On the bottom corner of the board, someone had stuck a small laminated card. It had a photo of a little girl with round cheeks and a hospital bracelet on her tiny wrist. Underneath the photo, in small print, were 4 words. This is why it matters. Every new worker who came through the break room read the board, and most of them, without knowing why, stopped for a moment at the small photo in the corner, at the little face looking back at them. And something in them settled the kind of settling that happens when you realize that the rules on the wall were written by someone who needed them to exist. And in an office on the floor above, an old man in a crisp white dress shirt was reading a report. Not a fabricated one, a real one. The kind of report that only gets written when someone decides that the truth is worth more than the safety of silence. He read it to the end. Then he set it down on his desk and looked out the window at the warehouse floor below, where workers moved in the particular rhythm of people who believe their work means something. He smiled to himself. He was thinking about a woman named Maya Reyes and a letter written on 4 pages with apologies embedded in every 3rd line, and how the most dangerous people in any organization are not the ones who shout, but the ones who decide quietly, in a room where no one is watching, that they will not be the reason the lie continues. If this story moved you, if you've ever stood in that room where no one would look at you, drop a comment below and tell us. And if you know someone who needs to hear that doing the right thing doesn't always leave you alone, share this with them right now. Hit subscribe so you never miss a story like this. Like the video so more people can find it. We'll see you in the next one.